and this is just beginning. The spirituality of the future is going to be based more on quantum physics. And quantum physicists are saying, well, actually, the world is an illusion. They'll use the word illusion because it sounds kind of safe. They won't say it's not real. That sounds too radical, and they might lose their funding. So they'll say, "Oh, yeah, it's an illusion," and they'll say that there's no such thing as separation because
Hey, what's up, y'all? Today I sit down with Gary Renard, the author of The Disappearance of the Universe, a book that totally flipped my perspective on its head. The way that Gary describes spiritual insight is very easy and digestible. So if you're looking for spiritual truths, this episode is for you. I highly recommend you watch it all the way to the end. I literally asked one question and I just sit back and I let Gary do his thing. So I hope you enjoy this conversation or monologue. Peace. Gary, thank you so much for taking the time, my friend. A good friend of mine forwarded me your book, The Disappearance of the Universe, and it's the Audible version, which I love because it has different characters in it, and so I can kind of, I can pick up the philosophy fairly quickly because of that, because of the characters in it. But yeah, I just can't stop listening to it. I go back and I re-listen to it because it's so fascinating to me. But first, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you're a busy man.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And the audio recording was a lot of fun because, unlike most audiobooks, we have three voices. There's myself and my two teachers, Arden and Persa. And had a couple of friends in Nashville, and we got to use this really good recording studio for a discount. And we took a few days to record it. And the most recent unabridged version of the audiobook is like 14 hours. So it's longer than most, and a lot of people had a good time with it. And man, it's very radical book. Sometimes when people buy my book, I say, well, you have my condolences because, they don't know what they're getting themselves into. This is an entirely different way of thinking about things. And yet at the same time, it's a logical thought system. And when I say thought system, I want to say right off the bat, it's very important to have a thought system. Most people don't. And it's very important to have some kind of discipline for the mind. Most people, they hear the word mind training or something, and they're afraid of it because it sounds like, oh, I'm going to be brainwashed or something. And what they don't realize is that they've already been brainwashed. They've already been brainwashed by this thing that I'll call the ego, which is the wrong part of the mind, which believes in separation. And what's going to happen, I think, in the future, and this is just beginning, is that the spirituality of the future is going to be based more on quantum physics than on the physics of the past. Almost everything else is based on Newtonian physics, where you have a subject and an object, and you and I are, separate from each other. So it looks like I'm over here on the West Coast, and you're over there in the East, and we're separate. And quantum physicists are saying, well, actually, none of that's true. The world is an illusion. They'll use the word illusion because it sounds kind of safe. They won't say it's not real. That sounds too radical, and they might lose their funding. So they'll say, oh, yeah, it's an illusion. And they'll say that there's no such thing as separation because you can't separate one part of it from another part of it because it's all one and it's all connected. And that's why something like A Course in Miracles, which is the main subject matter of my books, as taught to me by my teachers, that is more the future because people are going to look at it as time goes on and they're going to say, you know what? This is saying the same thing that the new science is saying, that the new physics is saying, not the old. And so even though it may appear to be a little out there to some people, the truth is it's going to be more and more accepted as time goes on. And I'm only the second generation that's even doing A Course in Miracles. And my books are the first to actually explain it in everyday language that actually sticks to the message of A Course in Miracles. There are a lot of teachers who teach it, but they don't really stick to it. They kind of make it like everything else when it's not like anything else.
Sure. No, I I had the course prior to reading your book, and to be honest with you, I couldn't really read it. It's very difficult to read, I think, in my opinion. It's a hard read, but it's something about thick books and like really thin pages that kind of like give me trauma, or you know what I mean, like flashbacks from growing up in church, with
Yeah.
verses and chapters and everything like that. I'm curious to your spirituality prior to your teachers coming in and visiting you in this reality. Like, what did that look like? I mean, you explain it in the book fairly well, but like, were you a seeker? Were you going to like workshops? Were you going to seminars? Were you like meditating? Like, what did that look like?
Well, when I was younger, I'd say really up until I was in my late 20s or so, I didn't have any form of spirituality that I could stick to. But even then, I was what I would call metaphysical. In fact, to call me metaphysical is probably an understatement. I always felt, even as a child, that I could talk to Jesus in my mind. Right now, I don't want people to think I'm a religious type because I'm not. I've never been religious. And I like to say, in the winter I'm a Buddhist. In the summer I'm a nudist. But it's like I don't really, get into any kind of organized religion. Never did. And in the first part of my life, really up until I was in my 20s, I was very depressed. And yet I always felt like there was something that I was missing, because something is missing, but I didn't know what it was at the time. And so I still had it in the back of my mind, there's got to be an answer to why this world sucks and why life sucks, and people are crazy and they're always attacking and murdering each other. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I got on a spiritual path. And I did this thing called the EST training, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was a good thing at the time for me. It was exactly what I needed, because I needed to get on a spiritual path. I still didn't really know exactly what it was that was missing. And I don't want to, get all holy on people, but, I've met billionaires who will say to me, Gary, I got everything and I still feel like, something is missing. And I'll tell them right to their face, I'll say, well, that's because something is missing. And when I tell them that it's God, most of them don't like the idea at first because they're not religious either. But then I'll say, well, look, read this, read my book, just peruse A Course in Miracles. As you say, it's not an easy read, but it's a lot easier to read after you read my first book. And then they'll call me like 6 months later, or write to me a year later or something, say, maybe you were right, because I feel like something was missing, and I feel like it's coming to me, like it's growing in me or something. So what is missing is God, but this is not the God that people have been brought up on. This is a real God that is not crazy, that is not wrathful and vengeful and into punishing people. And, the God of the Bible looks suspiciously human. It has a lot of human characteristics, including jealousy and vengeance. And that's not the real God. The real God is love. The real God, in fact, is perfect love. But we have to understand the implications of that. If God is really love, then all that it would know how to do would be to love. It wouldn't know how to do all these other things that God is accused of doing in the Bible. And so this gives us a perfect God, which in turn gives us a perfect home to go home to. And it turns out that this world we appear to live in is not our home, and we don't belong here. And God did not put us here. We made a decision, a bad decision, to go off on our own, very much like Jesus' story, the prodigal son, where the son left the father's house. You notice he wasn't kicked out. That whole story about being kicked out of the Garden of Eden, it's just a story. It was our stupid decision to leave. And just like in Jesus' prodigal son story, all we found was scarcity. Because in perfect oneness, which is the condition of heaven, there's no such thing as scarcity or lack or death or sickness or imperfection. Everything is perfect. But as soon as you have a division, then you no longer have oneness. Now you have a subject and an object. Now you have two-ness, and everything appears to be outside of you, when the truth is that's an illusion and there's nothing outside of you. But it leads to all kinds of perceptual errors. So what we're seeing is something that we made. And if that idea seems far out to people, it's not an original idea. It's not the first time anybody has ever said that. The Buddhists like to say that there are three great mysteries in life. To a bird, it is the air. To a fish, it is the water. And to a human being, it is himself. And we don't realize that we made all this up. That this is an error of our own making. And of course, that's blasphemy to Christians and certain religions, because they want God to be the maker of the world, and they don't realize how crazy that makes him. And the truth is, God is not crazy, and God would not make a world like this. At one point, A Course in Miracles says, if this were the real world, God would be cruel. For no father could subject his children to this as the price of salvation and be loving. So A Course in Miracles doesn't have a very high opinion of the world, but it does tell you how to look at it in a different way. And that brings up the subject of a certain kind of forgiveness that the Course teaches that is not the same as the way that people traditionally think about forgiveness. Most people think, well, I'm forgiving you, if they think about forgiveness at all, which most people don't. But if they do, it's like, well, I'm forgiving you because, well, I'm better than you. And you really did it, and you're still guilty, and it's still your fault, and you're still going to hell. But I'm forgiving you because, well, I have Jesus and you don't. And, maybe someday if you agree with me about everything, and, maybe then you can go to heaven too, but I doubt it. And, that's kind of forgiveness makes the whole thing real in your mind, and you will never be free of it that way. But there's a certain kind of forgiveness that doesn't make it real, that realizes that what you're seeing was made by you. So now you're forgiving people, not because they really did something. You're forgiving them because they haven't really done anything, because first of all, it's an illusion. It's not true. Secondly, you made them up. So what you're interacting with is your own projection. What you're seeing when you look out on the universe of time and space, which seems so impressive, is actually nothing. It's just a projection that is coming from you. And the reason that it seems so big and so impressive is because you made yourself look very, very small. And the reason that you look very small is because you have this guilt that's in your unconscious mind that you'd never know about. And that can be traced all the way back to the idea of separation from God, which engendered this deep unconscious guilt in the mind. And it will stay there unless it is healed. And the way that it's healed is through the kind of forgiveness that I'm bringing up. So now we forgive people because they didn't do anything. We made them up. And in the quantum understanding of it, you realize that to forgive another person is actually forgiving yourself. The forgiveness that you're putting out there is actually going to you. You're the one who is going to benefit from it. So now I can forgive people because I know that I'm the one who's going to benefit. I'm the one who's going to feel better. I'm the one who's going to be happier. I'm the one who's going to be more peaceful. I'm the one who's going to feel 20 years younger. So it's like there's all kinds of fringe benefits that go along with this, even though that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to wake up, because what we're experiencing here, I've called it an illusion. I think A Course in Miracles does a very good job of taking that idea that the world is an illusion and refining it into the idea that this is a dream that we will awaken from. And it's that awakening that is enlightenment. It's kind of like what Buddha was talking about when he said, I'm awake. He didn't mean that he was more awake in the dream, and more aware and alert and ready to manifest like hell in the dream. What he meant was that he had awakened from the dream. And that's not a minor distinction, it's everything. Because A Course in Miracles is not about fixing up the dream and keeping it. It's about awakening from it and returning home. So the goal of my books and A Course in Miracles is nothing less than going all the way home to God. Now, people may hesitate because maybe they have a couple of things they want to do here while they appear to be hanging around. And that's perfectly all right because this kind of spirituality does not call for sacrifice of any kind. Uh, it's not asking you to give up anything. You can still have your life. You can still do what you feel guided to do. I hope that you're doing it with the Holy Spirit, which we'll get to. But it's like you can still have your life. You're not being asked to give anything up. All that you're being asked to do is to look at it differently. And you start to realize that you're beginning to look at it from a place of cause instead of effect. If the world is being done to you, then you're a victim. And there's no power in being a victim. But what if the world isn't being done to you? What if it's being done by you? What if it's not coming at you like you thought? What if it's coming from you? What if you're the one who's doing it? Well, then not only are you not a victim, but there's a lot of power in that idea. And the idea is that I don't have to react to it because it's my projection and there's not anything in it that's bigger than me because it's coming from me. And because of that, I don't have to react to something that isn't real. I can forgive it. I can let it go. And I can engage in, I'm going to condense things here because I'm going to try to give people the big picture. And the thing is, I can look at it with what we'll call spiritual sight, which is instead of making the whole thing real, instead of making bodies real, uh, what they really are is part of what I made up. And so I can overlook that. I can overlook the body and think of people as being what they really are in their original state, in which is what they always will be, which is a divine creation of God, something that is perfect like God. And when you look at them that way, it changes your unconscious mind, which you would never be able to do without having a kind of forgiveness that does not make it real and comes from a place of cause instead of effect. And there's a very important law of the mind that is articulated in A Course in Miracles. It says, as you see him, you will see yourself. And the reason that's so important is because of an idea that Carl Jung had. His idea was that if you could drill down deep enough into the mind, right, if you could get down deep enough in there, you would discover that there's just one mind. And he called it the collective unconscious. But the reason that there's only one mind is because there's really just one of us. We look out there and we see 8 billion people and we say, wow, that's very impressive. Well, no, that's a trick. There's only one of us. The way the Hindus put it, they call it the one appearing as many. But there's really just one of us. And that means that if you get down deep enough into the mind and realize that your unconscious mind knows that, you would have to know that there's just one of us because that's where the projection of the universe of time and space is coming from in the first place. So your unconscious mind, way down deep, knows everything, and it knows there's just one of us, and that's a two-edged sword. There's a lot of power there, but there's also a big problem. And if you take advantage of it, you'll come to learn that the reason it's a good thing is because your unconscious mind will interpret anything that you think about another person or the world or any situation or event, which is all part of your projection. Your unconscious mind will interpret your thoughts to really be about you, not what you thought. You thought, oh, that politician comes on the TV screen who you can't stand, and you go, that son of a bitch. Well, you just called yourself a son of a bitch because whatever you think or say about another person is really just going to you. It's not going to somebody else. You made up the whole thing. And once you understand that, there's a lot of power there because now you can try to control the way that you think about the world and about yourself and about uh, everything. Because whatever you're putting out there, it's just going to you. So, what do you want to call yourself? Well, if you overlook people's bodies, which are not real anyway, I mean, this is all hologram. It's like something that is actually in your mind. And your mind is bigger than the universe of time and space. It would have to be because everything in it is in your mind. So, what you do through forgiveness is you're sending a message to your unconscious mind about yourself. So, we're not forgiving people now because we're being generous or because, we're being charitable. We're forgiving people because what we're seeing, first of all, is not true. And I say, thank God, because if this was the real world and if God made it, we'd be screwed. And the truth is that by looking at it differently and thinking in terms of reality, which is what spiritual sight does, it's spirit that is real. But I want to make a quick definition of spirit because the kind of spirit that I'm talking about is not a partial thing. Most people think, oh, I have a spirit, like a soul, and it goes on after me and this thing leaves. It looks suspiciously like the body that it just left. And that's still a separation idea because it's an idea of individuality. And the kind of spirit that is being taught in A Course in Miracles is not part of it, it's all of it, exactly the same as its creator. So you think of people as not being people or being separate individuals, you think of them as being the whole. So if I meet somebody, I mean, I know how to carry on a normal conversation, and I don't start talking to them about God and how they're God and all that. I carry on a normal conversation with them. But in the back of my mind, I know what they really are. And what they really are is this perfect divine creation, this perfect spirit. And that is something that is immortal, it's invulnerable, it's something that can't be touched by anything in this world, can't be threatened by anything in this world. So I love the way A Course in Miracles says right in its brilliant introduction, nothing real can be threatened. Well, that's what you really are. You are this immortal spirit. Nothing unreal exists. And this is where the Course gets absolutist and a little bit difficult for some people. It's saying that nothing but God is true, that only one thing is true and nothing else is true. And that's a purely non dualistic teaching, which is what A Course in Miracles is, even though it's not presented that way by most of its teachers. Because it's hard to realize that what you're seeing is not true when all the information that you're getting is telling you that it's true. All the senses are telling you, oh, this is real, this is true. And what the Course is saying is, well, actually, no, that's a trick of what we'll call the ego. And the ego is a much bigger word in the Course in Miracles. The Course is very big teaching. It's not the little teaching that some people present it as. It's a very big teaching, and the ego can be defined as the idea of separation because it's based on the idea that we appear to separate ourselves from our source. So think of the ego as being based on separation. The Holy Spirit, which is the right part of our mind, is based on oneness and joining and ultimately love. And, I'm not going to get all hearts and flowery on you, but the kind of love that I'm talking about is the love of God that is something that is real. You can't see it, yet it is something that can be experienced. Isn't it interesting, that the most real thing that we have in our lives is something that you can't see. You can't see love. I remember this movie Contact, which I really liked with Jodie Foster. And Matthew McConaughey asked Jodie Foster, "Do you love your father?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Prove it." And you can't prove it because it's not something that can be seen, yet it's the most real thing that we have. Well, the most real thing that actually exists, and in fact, the one thing that actually exists, is God. And isn't it interesting that you can't see it and you can't feel it, but you can experience it? It is actually possible to experience your perfect oneness with God, even while you appear to be here, even while you appear to be living here in a dream. It is possible to get glimpses of reality and what that's like and what it feels like. And it blows away anything that this world has to offer. Once you experience it, you'll say to yourself, okay, give me more of that, because that is so much more real than this is. After that, the world seems, very illusory and transitory and temporary, which is exactly what it is. And reality is not like that. Reality is full and whole and complete and satisfying. And it does supply what was missing. And you no longer feel that nagging feeling that something is missing, that something is being left out. And this is really a win-win situation because, as I said, you can still have your life. But because your mind is more and more in a condition of spirit, the more you look at things that way, then your life can be kind of guided by spirit, which we'll call the Holy Spirit, which is in the right part of your mind. And, by the way, the word inspired comes from the words in spirit, because the more in spirit your mind is, the more you are likely to have these inspired ideas, these genius ideas that you never would have had if you weren't getting your mind into that condition of spirit. So these ideas can be very practical. People when I first start talking about this, they'll think that doesn't sound very practical to me. But how many inspired ideas do you need? Well, one of them can change your life. One of them can get you going in the right direction, and it can be very practical. Let's say that you have a business and you're trying to get it to work and you can't quite get there. You can't quite make it work and you can't figure it out. And you're sitting around and you're having lunch and this idea just hits you. And it's like, oh yeah, I should try that. And you try it and it works. That's when you'll start to get excited about those kinds of ideas, because those ideas can lead you in the right direction and change your life and make things work for you. It happened to me. I was living a pretty miserable life. And I think if I didn't, get on a spiritual path, and especially if I didn't find A Course in Miracles, I think my life would have been kind of sad. But because I got going in the right direction, my life took all kinds of turns that I never would have expected. If you told me, 25 years ago that I'd be living in Hollywood with this beautiful woman, I would say, yeah, right. It just wouldn't have entered my mind. And, you never know what's right around the corner. You never know what spirit might have in store for you if you're willing to listen. But most people aren't listening. Most people are doing everything on their own and reacting to news and what they see on the internet. And, it's not a very happy place. So you want to be able to transform the way that you're looking at it to, well, what would the Holy Spirit think about this? How does Spirit look at this? And what the Holy Spirit would do, first of all, is don't judge it. As soon as you judge it, you make it real in your mind, and it will stay stuck there forever. What you've got to do instead is overlook the illusion, because it's not true, and replace it with the truth. And the truth is this perfect spirit. And the irony, as I said, is that you can still have a normal life, interact with it. The difference is in the way that you're looking at it. And that way that you're looking at it leads you to inner peace, which is rare, but it's the only way that this world will ever live in peace. The people of the world will never live in peace until the people of the world have inner peace. Until then, the world is just spinning its wheels. You can try 1,000 different ways to achieve world peace, and it's not going to happen. And just in this cycle of history, we've been trying for 10,000 years to try to have peace on earth, and we're not even close. And we never will be until we stop looking at the world the old-fashioned separation way and start thinking about it in terms of oneness. Because someday, not a lifetime, but someday people will have inner peace. And what we're seeing, according to A Course in Miracles, out there on our screen, which we are projecting, is actually an outer picture of an inward condition. And unless you change that inward condition, the outer picture cannot change. You can't fix the world. You can't solve the world's problems in the condition that the world is in. You have to change the inner condition, and only then will the outer picture change. And you don't have to wait for the world to wake up. That's going to take a long time. You can do it in this lifetime. You can do it now, because you are the captain of your soul, and you can make your own decisions, and you don't have to wait for everybody in the world to catch on and wake up and smell the coffee. You can do it now, learn, practice forgiveness, and start getting used to the idea of thinking big. Course in Miracles thinks big. And what it's thinking is none of it is true. All these things we thought were so important, people think the universe is so important. No, it's just a projection that we made up, and we made it look big so that we could feel small. And none of it's true. The only thing that is true is the goal, which is God. And why is that important? It's important because of one of the things that the Course itself says. It says, a chief aim of this is to save time. It says the miracle, which is a certain kind of forgiveness that I'm describing, can substitute for learning that may have taken thousands of years. Now, I don't know if you believe in reincarnation or not. It's kind of technical anyway. You don't actually go into a body, so you're not actually incarnating, because even your own body is a part of the same projection as everything else. So when you look in the mirror, you're getting ready to go out or something, you look in the mirror, you see this image of yourself. Well, that's not true either. That's not you. As the Course teaches, you are not a body. It says, I'm not a body, I'm free, for I am still as God created me. And you get used to the idea, well, I don't have to take this body personally. It's not who I am, it's not what I am. At one point, the Course says the body mocks me by enclosing me in this tiny little speck of time and space, which is not even worth bothering with almost. And it's like nothing. And what I really am is way beyond that. And that's the way you want to start thinking about yourself. And the fastest way to do that is to think that way about others, because when you do, it's just going to you anyway. So to put the forgiveness thing in a nutshell, and you can learn the components of it, but you're not going to get the results unless you practice it. And what that is, something happens in the world that you need to forgive, something that makes you feel uncomfortable, something where something happens and you want to go, right there, you can do the first step of forgiveness. You got to stop yourself. You got to stop yourself from reacting to whatever it is that pushes your buttons. And it's going to be different things for different people, sometimes opposite things, because this is a world of duality. So everything is based on duality. Everything has polarities, opposites. You got left and right, up and down, inner and outer, is 1,000 different polarities, and none of them are true. And what you need to do is stop yourself from making it real and reacting to it and judging it, because judgment makes it real. Now, if you can do that first step, which may be the hardest part, then you can get to the second part. The second part is spiritual sight. At one point, A Course in Miracles calls it the holy instant. And that is when you choose the right teacher in your mind instead of the wrong teacher. Most people, including me, the first half of my life, were listening to the wrong teacher, the ego, based on separation, making it all real. Why does the ego want to do that? Because this is the ego's creation. And I hate to use the word creation, it's more of a miscreation. And it's like this whole thing was made by the ego. The ego cherishes the body in individuality. Why? Because it feels special. It feels important to be an individual and to have goals and achievements and things like that. And uh, the Holy Spirit is saying, no, that's nothing. Why? Because it's temporary. People, they first get introduced to this kind of spirituality and they'll think, oh, if I do this, I got to give up my identity. I got to give up my body. I got to give up my relationships. I got to give up all this. I got news for them. 50 years from now, they're going to have to do that anyway because the body is not going to last. Nothing here is going to last. And why not do two things? Why not spend your life attaining something that will last forever? And once again, you can still have your earthly life as you think of it. And you can have both. You can have your cake and eat it too. So I haven't given up having a good time. I still like to party and go out and, enjoy the Hollywood life. But at the same time, I know it's nothing. I know there's nothing here. And, I have a beautiful wife and she's into this kind of thing too. And she teaches it. And, we can have very deep spiritual conversations. But if we go to a party in Hollywood, we don't go in there and start talking about God. We talk about whatever they want to talk about, and we're perfectly capable of talking about just about anything. The thing is, while I'm talking to them, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so you think you're this and that, you think you're a big star or something like that. I know who you really are. And what you really are is nothing less than God, exactly the same. A Course in Miracles is teaching that the separation from God never occurred. It never happened, which really brings up the subject again of this being a dream. Because what happens, like if you're in bed at night and you're dreaming, are you really going anywhere? No, you're not going anywhere, but it sure seems that way. It sure seems like the events in that dream are happening. And you'll even respond to it as if that is reality. Because for all intents and purposes, when you're dreaming a dream, that dream is your reality. And sometimes it seems so real that when you wake up, you're surprised that it wasn't true. It's like, wow, what a vivid dream. I felt like that was real, but it wasn't. This dream is no different. The Course says that all your time is spent in dreaming. It's just different degrees, different levels. The Aborigines in Australia were really into that. The idea that this is a dream and that your spiritual life, because you don't have a body, is more real, not less real than what this is. And so this is a dream. The idea is to wake up from it. And when you awaken, you are at home because you never left, which brings up the idea that the kingdom of heaven is here right now. It hasn't gone anywhere. The truth hasn't gone anywhere. It's still here right now. It reminds me of something that, Jesus said 2,000 years ago. And by the way, if somebody doesn't know, Jesus is the voice of A Course in Miracles. I figured I'd break it to him gently. And it's like, there's this thing called the Gospel of Thomas that was forbidden by the church. So it never became a part of the Bible. But in the Gospel of Thomas, the disciples go up to Jesus and they say, when will the kingdom come? When will the kingdom come? They're anxious. And Jesus says, well, it will not come by watching for it. It will not be said, behold here or behold there. Rather, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth and people do not see it. Oh, well, the reason they don't see it, and he couldn't go into detail 2,000 years ago because people wouldn't have understood it. But the reason they don't see it is because it's out of their awareness. It's not that it's not here. It's just out of their awareness. And what A Course in Miracles does, once again, in that brilliant introduction, it says that it removes the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. And I said the Course is a very big teaching. When it uses the word love like that, it's talking about the love of God. It's not talking about human special love, which is childishly egocentric, according to the Course. It's talking about the love of God. So when you practice the kind of forgiveness that I'm describing, you're removing the blocks by undoing the ego. The Course teaches that salvation is undoing. You're undoing the false you based on separation, the ego. And that's a brilliant approach, because if you could finish that job, then eventually the real you would be all that's left. And you don't have to do anything about the real you. The real you is already perfect. It's already the same as God created it, and that can never change. And you don't have to achieve that. It's already yours. All you have to do is undo the false you that believes in the false universe and separation. So it removes the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. Your natural inheritance is nothing less than the kingdom of heaven, all of it. And it's yours. And God gave it to you. You don't have to earn it. If you give me a Christmas present, I don't have to earn it. You gave it to me. It's mine. And that's yours, but you have to awaken to that realization. And what happens as you do this kind of forgiveness is that you start to experience being a body less as you go along, and start being spirit more as you go along. Maybe the body will start to feel lighter. Maybe you'll start to feel more like the figure in a dream, which is what the body really is, instead of this thing you have to carry around. And it's fun. I'm 74 years old. I don't feel any different than I did 20 years ago. And it's like a better quality of life because you're more peaceful. And when you're more peaceful, you can think more clearly, and you'll be more effective in the world. People think this might make them less effective in the world, but actually it makes you more effective because you can think more clearly. You can be inspired. You can have these ideas that you never would have had. And it's a good way of life. And you can still have a good time too. Reminds me, I have to tell at least one joke, because I always tell a joke in my workshop. Right. So this monk, right, he's down the bottom of the monastery, down in the basement. He's looking through all these old scrolls, all these old teachings and writings. He's going through them, hoping to find something, and he does. And he sees it, and he gets all excited. And he takes it, and he goes running upstairs to the other monks. He says, hey, look what I found. Look what I found. It wasn't supposed to be celibate. It was supposed to be celebrate. So they got a kick out of that and kind of thought about it. And A Course in Miracles is not a moral code about how you behave in the world. It's saying that what you do is a result of what you think. And if you're thinking with love, as A Course in Miracles teaches, teach only love, for that is what you are. God is love, so am I. And if you're coming from a place of love, you're not going to be doing bad things. You're not going to be hurting anybody. You're not going to be going out of your way to cause problems. You're going to be living a peaceful, loving kind of a life, which is what the Course in this kind of forgiveness leads to. Because you're undoing the part of the mind that believes in separation. And by doing that, you're taking away a lot of the cause of all the problems that you see in the world. The Course says that judgment is the cause of all the sorrows of the world. And if you really look at it, everything in the world is based on separation. And what keeps it that way is the judgment that makes it stay that way in people's minds. And, it's all judgment. I mean, it's actually startling when you start to learn these things. It's startling to look at the way that it shows up in the world and everything that we do. The internet, which didn't even exist, 40 years ago. It's like, it's like separation everywhere, and politicians putting this group of people over here and this group of people over there so they can hate each other, because it makes more power for the politician. And that's the oldest trick in the book. I mean, that has been going on forever. And not. Hitler is just a recent example. That's been going on all through human history. The king or whoever gets power by going to war with somebody and getting his people to hate those people. that they're going to war with, or it could be people within their society that they go after. But that's the case. You get people against each other, and what it really is the projection of unconscious guilt. It's kind of like the politician who wins the election is the one who most successfully gets the people to project their unconscious guilt onto the other side. Oh, they're the guilty party. They're the ones who are the problem. A lawyer who wins his case, like, he's the one who gets the jury to project their unconscious guilt onto the other side. Oh, that's the guilty party. They did it. They're responsible. For the defense, it may be the prosecution that is the guilty party, but it's like, somehow you got to get people to agree with you about somebody else. And, that may be a way to success in this world, but it's not a very good way of life. It's just a damaging thing to your mind. And in my view, if you spend your whole life that way, it's a wasted life. But what if you could do both at the same time? What if you could learn spirituality, learn how to forgive, and still have your life? Well, that's a proposition that is a very good thing. Doesn't cost you anything. Well, okay. Course in Miracles maybe cost you $25 or whatever. I know people who have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on therapy, and they didn't get any better. The therapist helped them figure out why they felt that way or whatever. But and then here's the Course in Miracles that actually works if you want it, because I say that because it won't work for you unless you apply it, unless you actually do the kind of forgiveness that the Course is teaching. And in order to do that, you have to practice it like every day. And that's pretty logical when you think about it. Like if I wanted to be a good guitar player, which I did it for about 25 years for a living. And, I realized if I wanted to be a good guitar player, the only way that I was going to do that was to play every day and to practice every day. And when you first start playing, you're pretty bad and you can hardly make the notes clear. And, you suck. But if you want it bad enough, you'll practice every day. And it's that wanting it bad enough that keeps you playing and gets you to where you want to go because you really want the results. And this is no different. If you really want the peace of God, as the Course puts it, then you'll practice every day. Now, the guitar player, after a year or so, might start to sound pretty good. After 5 years, maybe really good. After 10 years, maybe great. And this is no different. If you do it every day, eventually you will get great at it. And it won't take as much time. You'll be able to do it effortlessly. You won't have to think about it very much. It just becomes a part of you. It becomes a part of a thing where you would miss it if you don't do it. But it doesn't take any time. In fact, it takes more time to judge people than it does to forgive them eventually when you get good at it. Because, you forgive them, it's over. But if you got to judge them, now you got to make up this whole story about why they're not worthy of your forgiveness. I mean, it would take less time to just forgive the bastards, So it's like there's all kinds of practical things about this where you can do it. And if you live in an environment where you don't want to talk to people about it, let's say you hang around with Christians or conservatives, and it's like, they'll think you're nuts if you tell them some of this stuff. Well, you don't have to tell them. You can still do it. My teachers in my books told me that I could do this and never tell anybody if I wanted to. I didn't follow that advice, but if I wanted to, I could live my life and never tell anybody, because this is all done at the level of the mind. This is not something where you got to go out and proselytize and tell people, oh, this is the right way and you got to do this like, religions do. You can just do it in your mind and it can work for you. And if you want to tell people about it, fine. If not, you don't have to. And I just felt guided by the Holy Spirit that I should do a couple of things. And it had just happened to help a few people. So I'm glad that I did. And it hasn't always been easy because it has opened me up to the kind of stuff that happens in today's society. If you put yourself out there in the public eye, you're asking for it. But so what? It's nothing. You start to realize that it's meaningless. And what you can do is you can practice your spirituality, and you can kind of like look for the Holy Spirit in your mind to guide you as to what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And it can be fun. It can be a lot of fun. And I want to just quickly talk about forgiveness one more time. Something happens, it bothers you. How do you know something needs to be forgiven? Because you're not comfortable. It's funny, I'm getting a message on my phone there. Sorry about that.
You're good.
But it's like, hey, I can not react to this. And when you're not reacting to it, now you can think with the right teacher. That's the second step, is look for the right teacher, the Holy Spirit, instead of the ego. Instead of judging it, forgive it, try it. You might be surprised. You forgive it not because it's really happening, but because nothing is happening. This is the hologram. People are going to be thinking like this in the future. It may seem a little out there right now, but in the future, this will be the spirituality of the future. And it's like people will say, okay, that person hasn't really done anything. I made them up. But I know now that what I'm seeing out there is a symbolic representation of something in my unconscious mind that I can't see, but it's a symbol. And I don't have to figure all that out. That's the Holy Spirit's job, right? All that I have to do is forgive it. That's my job. If I do my part, the rest will be taken care of for me, because my mind will be healed by spirit. In fact, as you undo the ego, then spirit is kind of like voluntary on your part. The Holy Spirit is kind of like taking over the mind and occupying the mind instead of the ego. So your mind becomes more and more based on oneness and wholeness instead of separation. Then there's the next part, which is really an attitude, a way of being. Spiritual sight is the way that you think. So it has nothing to do with the body's eyes. You may be seeing symbols of it with the body's eyes, but real spiritual sight is done at the level of the mind, and it's your attitude about everything. And your attitude about people is that that's not them, that what they really are is the way that God created them, which is exactly the same as God, because God doesn't do different. God does perfect oneness. The Course describes heaven as the awareness of perfect oneness, and the knowledge that there is nothing else outside this oneness, nothing else within. And it's possible to experience that as you undo the ego. You may be sitting around, and aside from inspired ideas, there's another experience that the Course describes where you can actually briefly experience your perfect oneness with God. And when that happens, it's such a glorious experience. And it doesn't have to last a long time. I mean, this may last like 1 or 2 seconds. And that's because it's outside of time. It's outside of time and space. Time and space are just separation ideas that were made up. It was kind of funny when Einstein came to the conclusion that time was relative. It really blew people's minds, because they thought that, that has to be a constant. You have to have something that's a constant. They don't realize there's nothing in this universe that is a constant. It's always in a condition of shifting and changing. And the only constant that there is your reality. Your reality is a constant because God is a constant, and you are exactly the same as God. So what you really are will never be threatened. And once again, in that introduction to the Course says, nothing real can be threatened. Well, that's what you really are. Then it says nothing unreal exists. That is anything else. Anything else that isn't God does not exist. And that's the choice that we're being asked to make. The Course says, salvation does not ask that you behold the Spirit and perceive the body not. It's not asking you to not see the body and just see Spirit. It says it is simply asking that this should be your choice. That's why what we do, we're still going to see bodies, right? But you overlook the body in your mind, which is how Jesus healed people 2,000 years ago. He didn't look at that person and say, "Oh, that's a sick person, you know, has demons or cancer or whatever." No, he didn't make the body real. He didn't make the illness real. He overlooked it. He said that person is not a body. That person is exactly as God created them, this divine, perfect creation of God that can't be sick. And he would heal them by joining his mind with them and reminding them of their reality, of what they really are. And that's what we do in forgiveness. We overlook the body and we think of reality, what that person really is. And we also know, because of what the Course teaches, that what we're doing is we're sending a message to our own unconscious mind that that's what we are. So it looks like we're forgiving other people, but because of what we know, we realize that we're actually forgiving ourselves. So I can do this because I know that it's good for me. You know, it's not like I give a damn about you. I mean, I know that this is good for me. And, you know, if you want to look at it that way, it's okay. You don't have to. I'm just saying that it's not against the rules. You know, it's not against the rules to benefit from this and to have a good time doing it. And it's fun to know the truth. You start to realize, you know, no matter how far out this sounds or my books are, you start to realize that by doing it, you start to experience it. You know, it's like A Course in Miracles says in the introduction to the workbook of the Course, it says, you don't have to believe the lessons. You may even actively resist them, but do them. And it's doing them that will show you that they are true. So it's like the proof is in doing it in experience. So ultimately, A Course in Miracles looks very intellectual, you know, and you've seen it, and you know, it's very impressive. You know, 1,300 pages. You got all this Shakespearean blank verse, iambic pentameter. You know, very impressive. Intellectuals love it. You know, if you give intellectuals something that looks simple, they won't listen. You know, you got to give them something very impressive. But eventually, you start to realize what it's saying, and you do it, and you start to realize that what it's saying is true. So, you know, it grows on you also, by the way. I didn't like the language of the Course of Miracles when I first started doing it, especially the text. It's very dense, you know, very difficult to read. Today, I can look at it, and I really like it. You know, it's beautiful. But at first, you know, I think it's an acquired taste for a lot of people. The workbook is more straightforward, and you'll find some of the best explanations of the Course in the workbook, especially those middle lessons, you know, like 100 to 200. And, you know, you'll understand the Course better when you get through that. And as time goes on, it starts to become a part of you. And I just wake up in the morning and I'll say, hey, Holy Spirit, you're in charge. And that's good to do right at the beginning of the day because now you're not doing everything on your own. You know, now you're being guided. And if you have a problem, instead of thinking you got to figure it out by yourself, you know, kind of like look in your mind for the Holy Spirit. And the more you get used to doing that, the more answers you're going to get. But the answers to the big questions that we think of be the big questions in life, like should I stay in this job? Should I move? Should I marry this person? You know, those kinds of questions can also be answered by the Holy Spirit. And it can lead you to some very good things. And, you know, you have to want it. So I can't supply that motivation for anybody. I don't try to convince anybody, oh, you should do this. If this is for you, then you know it. And nobody has to convince you. You just know that you want to do it. And that's one of the things that I like about it. That I just put it out there, and if people like it, fine. And if they don't, well, I have other things to do too.
Sure. I love it, man. I love every second of this. I know we're at time, but Gary, where can people find you? What is your website?
Yeah, it's simply GaryRenard.com. I thought of the name for the website myself. It's GaryRenard.com. and there's more information there than you're going to want. So it's like plenty of stuff there. When I finish my fifth book, which it's almost done, it'll be out this year. Uh, then I'll start making more uh, public appearances in order to teach what's in that book. Right now, I'm not speaking too much in public. I am doing a thing in a couple of weeks in San Francisco, which is live in person. But once the book comes out, if you go to my website, it says live events. Just click on that link up at the top and it'll tell you where I'm speaking. And also some of the online workshops that I do. My wife Cindy and I, we do online classes. We appear for different venues, sometimes online, sometimes by myself. And yeah, they'll be able to find out everything right there at the website. And it would be great. And if you're going to read any of my books, I would recommend you read the first one first, because it really is the kind of a thing where, if you pick up A Course in Miracles, you start to read it, you'll probably say, what the hell is this? But if you read my first book, I'm not trying to be, self-bragging or anything, but it will save you at least 20 years if you just read that book first and then start reading A Course in Miracles and doing the workbook. You will have saved yourself a great deal of time. And that's one of the things that the Course itself talks about, is saving time.
Sure. I love it. Gary, thank you so much for taking the time, man. This has been fascinating. I love your philosophy on life. I love the work that you do. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Trey. I appreciate you having me on. And maybe after my next book comes out, we can do it again.
Sure.